This is TWiT. I got the Apple Ultra wristwatch. Does this watch make my butt look big? Does it actually makes it look small, doesn't it? It's a pretty hefty thing, but
you could watch a TV show on that watch.
Well, and wait, that's why I kind of like it.
Like maybe not the Lord of the Rings TV show, but I feel like one of those HBO prestige dramas without dragons, you could totally watch it on that watch.
As long as there are no dragons.
I mean, I'd consider it. I just like the idea that you can get large type on it. That makes me happy.
Yes.
There's some people who want to think of it as an accessibility watch. I'm like, yeah, but I have tiny little woman wrists, and I don't think that's for me.
No, it might not be great to wear, but it is a lot better to use this face
They should give you
all
Wonder
kinds of
Woman
things.
bracelets, actually.
100%. I like it.
Well, this is actually the thing is you take a look, the watch is a form factor that goes back a couple hundred years, right? So why aren't we updating our technology form factors for wearables to reflect what our stuff actually is meant to do, as opposed to trying to mash these previously unheard of tasks and processes into things that were invented to reflect a much earlier
Lisa,
metaphor?
I'll tell you
been
why.
doing that forever. Well, go ahead, Lisa.
Here's an example of a ladies' fashion band on an Apple Watch.
Terrible.
It doesn't look good.
No.
It doesn't look, it's too thin.
No, give us the Wonder Woman wrist cuffs, man. That would be awesome. Like,
there you
imagine
go.
Wonder Woman wrist cuffs
Wrist
instead of
cuffs.
like turn the watch into like a wrist cuff.
Here's
Make
some,
it sci-fi.
here's some bling.
But to Lisa's point, Leo, if you think about the original Macintosh desktop, what they were doing is they were taking a computer
I got one
and
for you.
using a very old, physical metaphor, moving it over to the computer, and actually not necessarily because it worked better, but because people were familiar with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's called
uncommon
skeuomorphism, right? And
Was
that's
it-
the thing we've kind of now started to eschew.
Isn't it Xerox PARC that really began to conceive of the desktop metaphor and start mainstreaming it back in the 70s?
They had to do that because this was all, I'm used to files and folders.
Yeah.
But now I think this is there you go. This is a very...
Well, ask anybody under the age
This
of
is
20.
The furry leopard elastic cheetah printed beaded bracelet strap for the iWatch SE and Series Ultra.
So how is this much
Thank you, no.
I don't know. Like, make those beads do stuff like the technology in Wakanda.
Oh, so you want both? you
I want it to exist. I don't want to own it personally, but I want it to exist.
You want to be a woman warrior with a watch.
I'm just saying, I think a watch is like a horse buggy where it was a technology that worked really well for the demand it needed to meet. And what we expect to do with the technology we wear has changed substantially.
That's why this is, and this isn't a watch any more than the iPhone is a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a technology device. And in fact, I can call people, I can send texts. This is actually a Dick Tracy watch.
It's fantastic.
I can be on a hike and listening to music without my phone, listening to music, make a call, fall and you want to hear the alarm?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Play it.
Cover your ears, everybody.
And if you're in your car, you're not getting pulled over by the cops, just to let you know.
If the cops' cars sounded like this, I'd be scared. This is, I think Apple said, 88 dB? So it's not so much intended to be super loud as detectable. If you've fallen and searchers know you're roughly in this area, you would set this off. You were saying there was a guy who had a heat stroke who passed away because he was feet from the path.
Yeah, it was a really sad case in Pleasanton last year where he was a distance runner. He went out. It was too hot.
Thank you.
It was too hot. He got heat stroke. He passed out. And because it's really hard to find people when they fall into underbrush.
Right. That's what this is for.
Yeah. It's basically to alert folks.
And see, to me, the sound of that alarm, I can't tell because I'm not in the studio. I don't know how loud it is to you guys.
It's not that loud.
But it's not like an alarm. It's not an ambulance alarm. It's not like the European. It's not an alarm as one traditionally thinks of it. I'm not saying it's a pleasant sound, but it's an unusual enough sound and it's diffuse enough that it feels. I understand what they're saying when they talk about how far the sound projects, how far it carries, and
But it doesn't hurt your ears.
People will do tests on it, but I felt positively toward it when I heard it in the video, and
you can tell. You can tell what it is. Somebody says I just scrambled a search and rescue team. I don't think so. I hope not. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Unless you have a great amount of power and you've configured it to do that.
Well, there are certain things that's hard to test. So the crash detection, that would be hard to test, right?
Yeah.
The new satellite feature.
Painful to test anyway.
Yeah.
So there's actually, this ties into my day job, believe it or not, because one of the big issues that's been emerging and percolating through communication is accurate 911 positioning and location. And we don't have a whole lot of time to get into laws that have just passed, but suffice it to say, there are now laws in place that require any address to be able to convey accurate geographic information to 911 dispatchers. And I was interviewing folks who run the emergency response services for a particular county in Tennessee, and this is a huge part of their job, is trying to find people who are in peril and get accurate addresses so they can send out the right type of search and rescue operation. Is it fire? Is it an ambulance? Is it police? Whatever. And what I'm super curious about with this watch is, in addition to the alarm, I want to find out how search and rescue operations feel. Like if they're saying, yes, this is something that has a provable effect on our ability to find people, especially in the outdoors, because everything is united, or everything is. The rise of people who need to be rescued in the outdoors has actually shot up exponentially. In part thanks to,
because of COVID.
GPS devices, watches, everyone's like, oh, I have 2 bars. I can go anywhere.
This watch makes me want to climb a mountain, scuba dive.
And you're like, I have GPS on it. I'm fine. You're not fine.
You're not fine.
You don't know how to climb a 14er.
No, you're right. I should not be out there.
So I would love to find out from search and rescue folk if something like this feature, which Apple is selling as a way to push peace of mind, will genuinely be effective for search and rescue operations, or if it's something where you have a sense of safety, but it's a false sense of safety because it doesn't get you the desired outcome.
Yeah.
We don't have the data yet, but I think that's going to be something worth keeping in mind and asking folks who do this for a living, have you seen a measurable impact on this? The same way they've seen measurable impacts on, we have had to take this person off a mountain because they got cold and called 911.
Right. Well, and this has features that would tempt me.
Yeah.
For instance, it's got a breadcrumb feature. I can push a button, and as I'm walking around, it will leave a GPS marker, and then I could, in theory, and I know I would get lost immediately, follow the watch back home.
Yeah.
Then that might make me think, oh, I could go off trail because I'm going to be able to figure out where I am. That's maybe not such a good idea.
And that's actually theoretically an accessibility feature, because there's turn-by-turn GPS that we all use, but if you are in a parking lot, never mind being off trail, and you're trying to get from one place that you're familiar with to a place that you're not, and you somehow get lost along the way, you can theoretically retrace your steps. I don't know how it behaves in practice, but I can see that application.
I guess I'll have to lose my car and try it. They actually do have
airport parking lots would be amazing for that.
There is a button that you can do a waypoint for your car, your parked car.
That's great. Yeah.
So they clearly know that that's maybe one of the uses for it. I wonder how much they're influenced by accessibility, that they're building something, for the extreme athlete, but really maybe this is for everybody. This,
there's a lot about accessibility that benefits people who aren't necessarily have that disability.
That's right.
Like curbs that, ramps on curbs benefit people with strollers, people on bicycles, roller skates. You don't have to be in a wheelchair to benefit from that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's
true. And I think those features too tend to trickle down in some way. So if you don't feel like buying a minimum $800 watch that is enormous, maybe in the next couple of years, some of those features, like the breadcrumb feature particularly, or some of the other ones that are not really, like, you're probably not going to get a dive computer on your Apple Watch SE, but at some point your SE or your 9 or your 10 might have a breadcrumb feature if it proves to be popular, and certainly from an accessibility point of view, that would be great to have on other products.
Someone will steal the idea. Maybe it'll be on your Fitbit.
It is kind of funny.
Chinese knockoff.
When I'm setting it up, it asks you some questions about how you want the watch set up. And one of the questions is, well, would you like to know how deep you are and how cold the water is when you're diving? And of course, I'm never going to use that, but I said yes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Of course I would.
Just in case you dive.
If I did fall off a ship, and I'd like to know, well,
as I'm going under,
as
for
I'm
the
going
last
down,
time.
I'm getting deeper.
Right.
Yeah. No, I do.
Well, we found Leo when he was in 50 feet of water.
Why wouldn't you turn that on? I think that's
So I have a girlfriend who's doing a project where she's hitting 50 different swimming holes around the state of California before she turns 50. And she's been blogging her progress. And one of the pieces of equipment she takes with her while she does this is a water thermometer, because she has limits on how cold the water is going to be. And I wonder how this watch might fit into that kind of project.
I can have, there's a complication on this particular face that says water temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
So I could actually be monitoring that even when I'm
So I want to shout out a comment that CR1 just made. In the U.S., the Apple Watch should include your health insurance status. If you don't have insurance, the Apple Watch should ignore you.
Oh, that's a very good point.
Well, what I'm wondering is why aren't insurance companies working harder to put together integrations that work on the Apple Watch?
Certainly.
Like Kaiser Permanente, why aren't you iWatch? Or Cigna?
Yeah, certainly there are a lot of hospitals doing research studies with the watch, right?
With watches, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, there are employers that are giving people incentives for having the watch, which has some implications for their medical insurance and either incentives or they're outright giving employees Apple Watches in exchange for some sort of healthy behaviors. And actually, I know a couple people who have had those experiences, and I kind of wonder how positive it is because there's all that data. So you as the employee get the benefit of having the watch, but are you also sharing more data than you intend, either with your company or with your insurer?
that was a plot point in Billions, in Showtime's show Billions.
was it?
At one point, the new owner comes
Yeah, I
in
remember that.
and gives an Apple Watch to all the employees. Like, you're so great. Stick around. Here's your Apple Watch. Then it turns out he's got a dashboard, and they're watching all the employees. And at one point, the two of them are watching one employee having a heart attack. And now they're going, God, what do we do? Should we...
Why wouldn't you call?
Because we didn't tell them we were going to be monitoring them. So they did end up calling emergency services. The EMT shows up at Wags' he's on a Peloton. Nice plug for Peloton. He's on a Peloton pedaling, and the EMT show up. He says, "What are you doing here?" "I'm fine." And he has a heart attack.
Wow.
It's kind of a stupid plot point, but it is that plot point, which is, employers can monitor you.
Well, the question is how much of a reasonable right to privacy do you have if you're consenting to put an employer-provided data
I'm guessing
generator?
Apple prevents that kind of. Apple, I can't imagine there's an MDM that lets you monitor your employees' heart rate.
Well, it's not just that. How many steps? Or if, for example, you block out on Outlook, I'm in focus mode for 4 hours because Outlook now lets you do that with Microsoft Viva, and you're at focus mode. But your focus mode is you like running 15K because you're training for a marathon. Can they now check and go, oh, somebody said they were in focus mode at work, but they've just done 25,000 steps.
By the way, Wags in this show says, "Who called the EMT?" and finally figures out, oh my God, it's his watch, and he immediately throws it out. So,
even though it might have saved his life,
it saved his life.
Yeah,
but your privacy is more important than your life, of course.
Well, is it? That's certainly how we act.
I think
as
there
the
are people
poet
who would
says,
argue
the grave's a fine and private place.